Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Unleashing Potentials podcast. Joining me today is special guest Tara. Tara, how are you?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me on.
You're welcome. Where in the world are you tuning in from?
I am tuning in from Northeast Pennsylvania, a small town called Honesdale, Pennsylvania. It's in the Poconos. Uh, so it is very cold in the winter, but it's a beautiful place.
That's awesome. I'm so happy that we can get this time to talk and get to know you and your journey. Why don't you start by telling us who you are and what you do?
Sure. So my name's Tara. I am a trained counselor as well as an expressive artist. I am a mom of four children, ranging anywhere from ages 22 to 9, and also a single mom. And I've been through a lot of trauma myself, a lot of grief and loss myself. I've been in the trenches and have had to learn how to rise. One of the things I've discovered through the process is that we go through things for a reason. So it's not always about us, but it's about helping others in the future. And so sometimes we have to go through things so that way the people that are going to be surrounding us, we can be able to offer words of encouragement. We can be able to lend them a hand and show them the way out of their struggles. So that is my passion. My passion is helping people be able to rediscover their value, rediscover who they are, where, why they are here, their purpose, and help them live life on purpose.
Oh,
And we like to do that through so many ways, but I love getting in the trenches with them and really discovering what that is and uncovering so much in the midst of tragedy, in the midst of loss and despair and sadness and all of those emotions. And that's when we need people the most.
I
So,
love that. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
yes,
You're right. Trauma can be something that shapes us to be better and become better and serve others. You're also serving
yes,
people now where you are.
I am.
Work with women in addiction, correct?
I do. I currently work at an addiction center with women, and I help them rediscover who they are um, after they, are detoxed from the drugs or alcohol. Right? There's that emotional sobriety that they now have to go through, and so it's been beautiful to be able to have the opportunity just to join with them and discover what that looks like and dig deeper. I also run some expressive art classes with them in groups, and that's a lot of fun as well. Yeah, a
Yeah.
little bit of each. And then I also have Rise to Create that a lot of times on the outside, I see people on the side who are not in recovery, who are just experiencing those
Yeah.
same traumatic losses and moments in their life where they feel like the atomic bomb just hit.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you work with arts. Before the recording, I was showing you my arts in the back.
Yes, beautiful
Yeah.
art. Oh,
The arts that I've done. Here's what I love about art is that all of us are capable of creating. Most of us do restrict
yes.
ourselves, but through arts, I've found freedom and healing and expression in ways that my mind can't comprehend or speak. And
Yes.
that's what I love about arts. But what type of arts in general do you do with clients?
So it's a variety. We usually pick a topic that we're going to work on, and then we use different mediums, whether it's going to be paint or pastels or colored pencils or even just charcoal, right? And it depends on what you're working on. It depends on the type of uh, the type of emotion that we need to work on,
Mm,
the type of experience that we want to work on. Sometimes it's just having fun. For example, we just recently did a grief and loss exercise where we just spent time
mm.
tearing pieces of paper.
Oh.
Um, and as they tore pieces of paper, they got to sit with their emotions
Mhm.
of all the individuals, all the losses in their life, whether it was an individual, whether it was a job they lost, whether it was a divorce, whether it was maybe a loss of a child. Like there's so many varieties of losses that we experience, maybe loss of identity, because they're having to re-identify who they are. Um, so we talk about that, and tearing it up allows your body to be able to process that in a creative way, because there's so many times where we can't put words to paper,
Mm.
we can't be able to express how we feel. But when we start to use that physical touch and that physical ripping motion, we begin to understand how we feel in a deeper way. And then we add in creative writing, and from there they got to take all those pieces and create something beautiful. So it's the representation that even when we're broken, we can still be able to make something beautiful out of it. Um, and it might not look like what we thought, but it's still beautiful.
Mhm.
So I love taking different mediums. I love, discovering what are they going through? How can we be able to help you get to the point where you can now express it? And
Yeah.
by doing that through art, how can we look deeper into your trauma and be able to see the areas that maybe you have shut off,
Mhm.
um, and turned off and put so many walls and grenades and bombs in front of that, right? And you're not allowing somebody in. How can we do that in a creative way?
Mm. Wow. Woman to woman, thank you for what you do. And thank
Yeah,
you for sharing your story, for allowing me and my audience to be part of your journey. And thank you for helping women,
yeah,
because women, everyone needs help, but women do need the help because that we do carry quite a lot on our shoulders, and it can be
yes.
bearable at times. So,
Mm-hmm.
I'm letting people know it's okay to get help from amazing people like yourself, and no matter where they are, just to get the help, right?
Yes.
It's easy to say, if I get help, that means I'm weak or I'm not good enough. I don't see
Mm.
it that way. What is your perspective on, people getting help in general?
I always tell people that we are given two eyes to see physically, right? We're given two ears to hear effectively. If we lose, ability to hear from one set of our ear, we're gonna lose an aspect of being able to hear fully. We have two legs to be able to walk, right? If we lose one leg, it's gonna be really difficult to be able to walk.
Mhm.
And so that just tells us that we cannot do it all by ourselves. We have to have somebody to come alongside of us to
Mhm.
help us out. And there's so many moments in life where we're only seeing it from one perspective, and we need a different perspective to help us to be able to restructure, reframe, rebuild what we are looking at.
Mhm.
And it can be difficult because sharing those emotions can be emotional, right? Sharing those emotions mean that you have to be vulnerable. And vulnerability is so hard for us, especially as women. I can speak for myself and from my personal experience.
Mhm.
Vulnerability, for me, was like, oh my gosh, I'm losing my superpower.
Mhm.
I need to be super mom. And if that means taking off the cape and I got to be vulnerable, what does that mean? Uh, and I had to recognize that, like, I need to do that on a day to day basis because the cape does nothing. It won't make me fly unless I am vulnerable, um, unless I am able to be real and honest.
Mhm.
And not being vulnerable meant that I wasn't honest.
Yeah.
It meant that I wasn't real. I was living this like fake illusion that I had imprinted before me, and this high bar that I'd set for myself, um, that I felt like every day I was not able to achieve. And so I love encouraging women that like those bars are not necessary,
Mm,
right? We need to be vulnerable because different perspectives can be able to help us actually achieve our goals even more.
mm,
Um, and we only know what we've experienced in life. And when we recognize that other people have gone through other experiences, that's rich. That's a untapped wisdom that we are shutting down when we choose not to be vulnerable.
I love that. Can you take us back and tell us a bit of your story? That molded and made you the woman that you are today. What
Yeah.
did you go through? Yeah.
I've been through a lot in my life. I will highlight one trauma that like really just flatlined me. But I've been through a lot. I've been through um, I've been through rape. I've been through an experience where I was in rejection. I've been through um, having to be that person that always fixed everything because I grew up in an environment where my mom was trying to put all the pieces together all the time. So she was always trying to make it look perfect. But in the meantime, we just could not function the way that she was achieving that bar, right? She had that bar so high. And being the oldest, I was always taught that you need to set the example. You need to set the example. And so I was trained to have this high bar. Um, and that came crashing down. I've been through rejection and shame. I had my first child, and that relationship ended early on and when I was 21. Um, and so I ended up having to be a single mom at 21 and reinvent my entire life all over again. At the in the midst of it, recognizing that I had rejection because he had left me for someone else, and shame because maybe I did something wrong. And at 21, I didn't have a lot of wisdom. I was super young, and all of a sudden I had to grow up fast. And so I reinvented myself and became a paralegal and did really well. But then I ended up getting married again. We had three more kids, so I had four at that time. And we had a from the outside, it looked like a happy marriage. It looked like everything was phenomenal. We owned our own business. I had my own practice. Um, and he was a personal trainer. We had three gyms, and everything just looked perfect.
Mhm.
We had a lot of other families that we would connect with. We had one in particular where we would spend all the time together and we would have meals together. So it looked like we had fun. Um, and it was that moment where he came to my door of my car and said, I want a divorce and I'm leaving you for someone you know. It was that moment for me that where everything that I had stuffed, the physical abuse from my first relationship, the emotional abuse, the verbal abuse, the rape, like everything that I had been through, all of a sudden had been stuffing for so long. And this moment just mounted up. Um, and I remember being like, what do you mean I know her? And it ended up being one of my good friends. It was one of the other families we had connected with. Our kids were all friends. And all of a sudden, I was having to recognize how am I going to get through this? And at the same time, how am I going to help my children get through this?
Mhm.
And what is my life going to look like? Because everything we had built for 10 years was this business and this home. And through the process, I was flatlined. There was 2 months where I couldn't tell anyone. I lost 100 pounds. I was suicidal. I was emotional mess. I was depressed. All I wanted to do was put the kids on the bus and go back to bed, buy some, pre-made dinners that I'd throw in the oven and act like it was all good. Uh, and people would be like, wow, what diet program are you on? And I'm like, this is not a diet program.
Mm,
This is like the worst part of my life, but I would keep that mask on. I would keep that facade on that everything was okay because we couldn't tell my children at that point.
mhm,
Um, so it was devastation. And in that moment, I recognized that my relationship with God
mhm,
was rocky. Because I had put our business, I had put my marriage, my husband, my kids, everything above
mm,
God. And I had gone on this fast track to like success.
mm,
And in that process, I recognized that like everything that was being said was about to crash and I was going to lose it all.
mhm,
And I remember telling myself, now what? God, I just don't want to live anymore. Like, what's the point? I've tried for 10 years. Everything's about to crash. I'm about to have everything on my lap. My husband at the time filed bankruptcy, walked away from the businesses. All the financial stuff was in my lap. Um, and I had this woman who now wanted to have a relationship with him and they wanted to live together and she wanted to still be friends and they wanted this fake facade
mm,
of a closely knit family. And I recognized that I was struggling because
mhm,
everything that I wanted or thought was going to be ideal for my family,
mhm,
all of a sudden was gone. And I had to learn to let go of each one. And so I would run. I would put tunes in my ears and I would run. And I became a runner. And I would just run, 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 run
mhm,
for miles with God in my ear. And I would just cry out to God. Um, and when I was finally at a point where I could tell everyone what was going on,
mhm,
um, I was still broken. I was angry. I was bitter. I was upset. I
mhm,
wanted the world to pay for every ounce of pain that I had went through. Um, and I didn't want anybody coming up to me saying it's all going to be okay because I didn't want to hear those words.
mhm,
I didn't want to hear that, oh, you can reinvent yourself.
mhm,
Oh, don't worry, you're strong, you can push through. I didn't want to hear any of those things. I wanted everybody to just be quiet
mhm,
and I wanted the like entire time of life to just pause,
mhm,
just so I could pull my thoughts together and be able to figure out what am I going to do. And I
mhm,
recognized in the process that I'm a huge planner.
mhm.
And God was like, you're not going to be able to plan.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was just like, this is not what's going to take place. I'm teaching you to let go of the reins of planning,
Mm,
and I'm going to take those reins and I'm going to show you a better life.
mhm,
And it was scary. There was a lot of moments where I was scared. And I remember at that point, we were living in upstate New York. And I tried the counseling with my husband at the time, and I found out that he was a narcissist. And I just remember the abuse center saying, distance. You need severe distance from this man.
mm,
But I was like, how is that even going to be a play? Because I started to recognize all the areas of my life where I was controlled. I started to recognize all the areas of my life where negative words had affected me and they were just numbing during our marriage because I grew up
mm,
hearing negative thoughts. I grew up believing that that was comfortable and okay. Um, and so I started to uncover who I was. I
mhm,
started to uncover all the flaws that were broken, that needed mending. I started to see that like I needed a lot of work
mhm,
in this process.
mhm,
And through the process, it wasn't easy. I remember God saying, like, you need to move. And I was reading the Mark Batterson book, Prayer Circle, at the time. And I remember praying the words at the end, like, God, use me, show me, and send me. Now, I will say, don't use those words unless you know really what you're saying.
Mhm.
because they're powerful words. But in the process, like God gave me dreams of homes. And I moved to Pennsylvania. I did a 3 hour radius, and my all my jobs came to Wilkes-Barre. And God like opened the door for jobs to be there. When I looked on Craigslist, the house I had in my dream was the house on Craigslist. Like God was so clear in that moment of valley. He was so clear with his directions as far as where I needed to move and how I needed to go. But he also separated me from everyone at that time, other than my counselor at that time. And he literally just soaked me. And I got trained by God during those times. And I will say the road was still rocky. When I moved to Pennsylvania, at that point, we had already gone through 2 court cases for divorce,
Mhm.
which was a financial burden. And and I was not making a lot of money. And so I was all of a sudden experiencing poverty and no credit. And I grew up with everything all put together. So this was a shock for me. And I had to learn to like understand how to move in that area and how to still see that there's purpose and hope even though everything in the natural was not working. And when I moved to Pennsylvania, because my job was in commission, I was not able to take my kids. And so then I experienced my children being physically abused and verbally abused. And I had my daughter screaming that she wanted to live with me and she couldn't. And this went on for a year. And I could only see them on the weekends at this point because I was out of state. And my son had a nervous twitch. And so there was a lot more that I had to go through. And as a mom, that's so hard to watch your children experience something that's not their fault. But in that process, that year, God knew I needed to be drenched further in Him. God gave me a solid foundation during that time. That year was like a time where God was like, here, I'm going to give you a solid foundation, and then I'm going to bring your kids. And a year later, after we had already gotten court ordered and I wasn't going to have kids, and a year later, he called me and said, I can't afford it. You got to take them. And I'm like, okay, God, you totally have a plan. Um, and so there's been a lot. And in that time frame, my oldest lost 4 friends, 2 to suicide. So I had to help him through grief and loss at that point. So there's been, I feel like I've had the PhD for grief and loss in in like my lifespan. And it's so interesting because even as a kid, like I experienced, we had next door neighbors that were like our parents, and I lost both them early on in life. And I lost a friend to a brutal a gang situation. And so there was so much, even as a young age, that I experienced with grief and loss. And God was just showing me where my purpose was. And I had to remain in that place instead of looking at what was in the natural, because I could have been bitter. I was bitter for a while. I was bitter at my friend. I was bitter at my ex for what they had did at one point. But I remember one drive up from Pennsylvania, and it was like almost a 3 hour drive. And I remember God saying, "You have to let them go. You have to forgive them." And I was like, what does that mean? I already said I forgive them. And he's like, no, you need to do this physically in the natural, and you need to say it in front of your children. And so the whole drive up, I fought with God.
Yeah.
But when I got there, I said, God, if you really want me to do this, then they need to be on the front porch. And sure enough, all 10 kids, because they had 2 kids together and 5 kids from before, plus my kids, plus them, were all on the front porch staring at me as I pulled up into the driveway. And I'm like, okay, God, I'll do this. Um, and in that process, the weight that lifted off my shoulders was so huge. Um, we don't recognize the weight that we carry until we let it go.
Mhm.
And so, one of the things that I encourage when I work with people is let go of all the hurt and the pain. Don't stuff it, because what we do is it just eats us up inside. And instead of becoming our best selves, we become this bitter, sour, prune that just gets wrinkly and wrinkler as we get older. And if we really want to be beautiful, we have to let it all go, because it's not our place to judge. And I had to recognize God brought me into scripture, and I had to recognize what it really meant for God to be a judge.
Mhm.
And what does it really mean to leave it in God's hands, and how to be brutally honest with God and lay prostrate before Him and cry my eyes out with Him. And um, so,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That's the reason I have a podcast, just to hear people's testimonies like yours and all the things that you've been through. What an incredible, powerful woman that you are. And
Thank you.
you kept going. You didn't stop in your journey. You're welcome. You didn't stop in your journey and you kept going. I'm just speechless. Not because I don't understand, I'm just admiring your bravery and strength to have overcome everything you just had to overcome. And obviously, it wasn't by choice, most of it, right? And
Yeah,
yeah, and I'm sorry, of what you shared that happened to you. And I want to
yeah.
let you know that you are enough. And the work that
Thank you.
you're welcome. The work that you're doing, it's mind blowing and it's needed. And I think often
Yeah.
our pain, past, and trauma, if we let it, it can teach us. And if we allow it,
Yes.
we can help others through the lens of our own stories and pain. And I felt that you were very patient with God and humbled yourself and allowed Him to speak through you to let you do His will through you, if that makes sense. And the fact that you forgive, my gosh, I wish more of us would forgive. There's so much power in forgiveness.
Yes. Yes.
What
There
did you
is.
feel
There
like
is
after
so
that?
much power.
Yeah, after you know you forgive, what are some lessons you learned from doing that?
I learned that I removed myself from being in between God and that individual.
Ooh.
So often God corrects people, right? When we do things wrong, God instructs you, and some of the instruction can be not good. And I would be
Yeah.
like, why am I experiencing this? And why is he experiencing it at the same time?
Mm,
And when I forgave, I watched all that dissipate. I watched all that disappear. And I watched that abundant life begin to come a reality.
mhm,
And I even watched, I used to call it the book of text that I would get from them, or the constant calls from CPS telling me, check your fridge. He's called again. We need pictures of your food. um,
yeah.
or even like the calls to my employers of like, how much is she making, just so I make sure that I don't get child support paperwork.
Mhm,
And that's had to be a journey. Like, there's so much, and I didn't always understand it. Like, part of forgiveness is that we hold on to it because we want some form of control,
mhm.
right? We want some form of control over the judgment that they receive.
Yeah, yeah.
We want that ability to say, yes, they're gonna get what they deserve.
Mhm.
But that's not our place.
Yeah.
And when I let that go, it was freeing, even emotionally, freeing in my thoughts,
Mhm,
freeing in the aspect that I could now focus on something else. Because when we are tied to another individual, our
mhm,
focus is there. And so we can't multi-focus as much as we want to say that we multitask, but we can't multi-focus. So if my focus is on you, and I need to forgive you, I
mhm,
can't be able to focus on something else behind me at the same time. That might be so much better. But the problem is that I'm still here looking at you, and I need to just let that go. So I can now look at the first thing behind me that's
Yeah.
really good for me. It needs my attention next.
Mhm.
Um, and so often we don't recognize that that's the place where we're at. That's what forgiveness does.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
and forgiveness also frees the person that you're letting go,
Mm.
because instead of you getting that correction, now that individual is getting that full correction, and now it's between him and God, or that individual and God, right?
Mhm.
We don't need to be that shield. We don't need to be that constant shield that gets hit because all of a sudden we feel like they need judgment, when in reality we're the one getting the judgment. God's not even doing the judgment.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Mhm.
and so it's been a process where God has really showed me, and it's interesting because it's all been through art. God's like shown me so much through my art. That's between art and God and
Mm.
the individuals that God surrounded me with.
Mm.
um and my family has helped, and my children. Like, that's how I got out of where I was at. And the mentorship that God surrounded me with, the coaching God has surrounded me with,
Mm.
really taught me to be able to see things like forgiveness,
Mm.
things like letting go of behaviors that I had, letting go of thought processes that were harming me,
Mm.
letting go of, for me, I was an overthinker because I was verbally abused for such a long time. I
Mm.
would overthink everything until I would like literally spin myself crazy. And then I would be like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And I had to restructure my thought process, and I had to really begin to like work on that.
Mhm.
So when we pull our own part out and we work on ourselves instead of focusing on the other individual,
Mhm.
we begin to heal. We begin to become that best version of us.
Mm. Oh, I love that so much. Yeah. And some storms that comes in life, they don't always come to completely wipe us out. They come to
No.
move something or break something. So we have to rebuild it and have a different angle or perspective on it. I can
Yeah.
say from my experience, unfortunately, as hard as it sounds, I wouldn't change one thing that happened to me because I'm talking to you right now, right? And it led me to have more experience, to see things differently, to feel it differently, and to definitely have empathy for others, right?
Yes.
Sometimes God has to do what he does best, which is let us learn. After all,
Yes.
he loves to let us learn for ourselves. What good is a God if he does everything for us? Here's an example for mothers or parents. Do we do everything for our kids? Do we give them everything that they
Yes.
ask us for?
That is so
No,
true.
we don't do that. Then most of us expect for God to do the exact same thing. And he is a good God after all, but he loves
Well,
watching.
that goes to that scripture verse that my ways are higher than your ways. And we like look at it from such a earthly sense, and we're like, God, but you're like our father here. And I'm like, no, not really.
Yeah.
um, and you said something that's so valuable, because one thing I've learned, and I will totally agree with you, I would go through everything all over again.
Yeah.
Because one thing I have learned about the experiences I've been through
Mhm.
is that it was the training ground, like David in the wilderness right before he met Goliath, right? He
Mhm.
needed that to fight the bear and the lions in order to fight Goliath. He needed to learn how to use the slingshot in order to fight Goliath.
Yeah.
And so much of our experiences are that, because it's not about us. It's about the individual that's coming to us.
Yeah.
It's about the individual that will be in our presence that we have the opportunity to impact.
Mhm.
It's about our next best move, our next best comment, our next best thought. And so often, like, we don't recognize the impact that we have
Mm.
just as we walk in the door. um, I can stay silent and impact the room in such a great way because of what I've been through and how I carry myself when I walk in the room and who I know I am, right?
Mm,
And we don't even recognize how that silence can even impact others.
mhm,
But I love my experiences because, like you said, if I was working this job as a counselor with women in recovery or even the women with loss, right? Like, I would not have any empathy. I wouldn't know where to pull from. But because I've been in their shoes to some extent, maybe not their exact situation, but I've felt those emotions and I've felt those pains.
yeah, yeah,
I've been through similar situations.
mhm,
I can be able to come alongside them and say, wow, let's try this.
mhm,
Wow, you're going to be okay,
yeah,
or here's hope.
mhm,
Let me share what God's done for me. Um, let's try this alternative that you haven't tried yet.
mhm,
Let's build these skill sets so you can feel confident when you walk
mhm,
on your own into your purpose.
mhm,
There's so much, and I needed to embrace that so
mhm,
I could be able to successfully stand in where I am at today.
mm,
So,
word,
because
yeah,
it's like a job. Like I can't be, I cannot be let's say I can't be a doctor without going to med school.
mhm,
I can't be, um, you know, a lawyer without going to law school, right?
yeah,
Same here.
mhm,
Like God knows the exact training that you need as an individual.
mhm,
And so let's figure out what that training is. Let's embrace it.
yeah, yeah,
Let's do it well so you do it once. Sometimes I wonder, I'm like, God, was I stubborn? And
mm,
I just needed to learn lost a bunch of times so you could, or was this really the plan?
mm,
Him and I are gonna have a conversation when we get to
yeah,
have it about like, God, was I just stubborn throughout life? And I needed to learn loss like multiple times, or did I just like, needed to learn it multiple times for individuals who have been through complicated loss, complicated grief?
yeah.
Um,
And yeah, I love what you're doing. I'll say it over and over because it's the truth. And we need to hear the truth, whether it feels good or not,
yes.
because I think there are so many lost women,
Mm,
women that have been broken to the bare bones since they were born, really, from
yeah.
traumatic homes, and they carry those things. They carry burdens that are not theirs to carry, let alone carry it
Yeah.
alone. So
Yeah.
that's why what you do is important. That's why it's needed. And that's why you're leaving a legacy, for those women. And I'm sure
Yeah.
once they leave, the few of them that leaves or however many, they can come back and testify to what you have done in their life. And that's the best feeling ever. Feel the understanding that
Yes.
you just save a soul, a life, and that
Yes.
very soul you save and help can go and do exactly what you taught them to do, which is
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've had so many other jobs in life, and I will say it is so rewarding when you are doing what you are purposed to do.
Yeah.
God's given us purpose back in the beginning of time when He made Earth, right? And He formed us out of the dust.
Mhm.
And He gave us breath and He talked to us and He said, this is your purpose, and this is what I'm going to birth you, and this is what I'm going to do with you, and this is what I'm going to do through you. Um, and that in itself has so much value
Yeah.
because we were made to accomplish great things. And when we recognize and flourish where we are at
Mhm.
in the will of God, it
Mhm.
is powerful because so many times it's life changing. So many times it's transformational work. And that is way better than anything else in this world.
Mhm. Yeah. You're living in your purpose and you're walking in it. And it's beautiful to see.
Yes.
Love seeing that in people. you found it and you're staying
Yeah.
in it. I can tell. Yeah. So what's
Yeah.
next in your journey, Tara?
Next is, I've done some podcasts. I know I want to speak. I know there's stages waiting. I will say that I know there's books waiting for me to write.
Mhm.
Um, and there's art rooms waiting for me
Yeah.
to be creative with individuals.
Yeah.
And I want to just be able to build a clientele that I know God has given me,
Mm,
because I know that God has certain women that He has said, you know what, Tara, what I've built in within you is going to unlock them. What you've been through is going to make them be able to then unlock it for those people that are going to be brought to them. And I want that chain effect, because the legacy I want to see is I want to see that chain never stop. I want to see that chain effect continue for years to come. So
mm,
God's purpose in women can constantly be seen.
mhm.
Um, and to be able to start that chain, to be able to see that come to fruition, is just beautiful. And I know I'm looking forward to furthering my education even further, and look at some higher education, which will be awesome, and just to continue to help women. But I definitely know that, this is just the surface. There's so much more that God wants to do. And I am open to it, and I am ready to embrace it whenever God's ready, because his
Oh,
timing's impeccable.
wow. You just might broke some chains for people who's listening.
Ah,
Every time you said God, I saw a chain getting loose and broken. And God, that's
amen.
God, God, God in any type of brokenness or addiction, God. Oh my.
Yes.
I have goosebumps.
Yes.
I'm saying,
Woo!
God, God, God. Wow. Mind blowing.
He is the chain breaker.
Yeah, that's like literally all I could visualize as you're speaking it. Just people being saved and chains being broken over and over and
Amen.
over. That's the kind of God he is, everlasting, infinite. That's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just don't want to put limits on God. I don't want to put, however he chooses. He's been strategic. I've worked with writers and illustrators in careers before. I've worked with lawyers, and I've worked, the I look back at the many like jobs that I've had. I've worked in church. Like, I like look at that as like opportunities that God gave me behind the scenes knowledge
Mhm,
to now, and a group of individuals to just connect with if I need to, right? Like, and there's so much possibility that God can do.
mhm.
Because like he's strategic.
Oh,
He
yeah.
is so strategic, and he loves a willing vessel. That's all he wants.
Mm,
A willing and able vessel. So the one I will tie it back, like, because God showed me, when you move to Pennsylvania, you and your children will walk through the Red Sea, and what you've experienced will be no more. And I can physically say today that the things I've experienced before, I'm not experiencing now,
mhm,
because I'm in a season in my life where I'm able to use those experiences and share with others
mhm,
how to overcome those. But also, even just the aspect of where God has brought me and what He's doing. And even just the factor that He's
mhm,
calling me out. And He had me say those three words: use me, show me, and send me. And today I can see that manifested.
mhm.
Was it an easy journey? Absolutely not. um, you better put your big girl panties on and be ready to
Yeah,
go.
yeah, yeah.
But I will say that I would do it all over again. I
Mm,
would say those words again, because they're powerful words, but they're words where God will teach you how to be fully surrendered and usable by him, because I can say in this seat, the only reason I'm successful is because God positioned me. The only reason I'm successful is because God has trained me. The only reason I'm successful is because what God has given me, and it has to be God and not me.
Mm.
Because me, I'm just like everyone else who's been through a lot of like stuff in life, right? And it's God who really does the transformational
Mhm.
work.
Yeah. Well, you went through
Yes,
that.
amen.
You went through it. You didn't get stuck. You didn't stay. You went through with the help of God, which is so powerful. Uh, two questions for you before we wrap up.
Sure.
I have 5 minutes before I jump to my next interview. Okay, first one. What is the meaning of life for you?
Meaning of life for me is living your best self
Mm,
at every moment of every day,
mhm,
and sharing what you've been through with others around you, leaving that impact
mhm,
that will shake for generations to come.
mhm,
Like that's life,
mhm,
because this, it brings me back to that scripture verse that says that the things on this earth will pass away,
mm,
but eternity is something we can hold on to.
mhm,
And so if I'm able to walk in a room and be able to reveal and be a billboard for God,
mm,
like that's huge.
mhm.
I know I just gave somebody else the life I have been given. Um,
Yeah.
and that is life. I mean, I love my children and they're amazing, but I hope they have the same passions about life that I've instilled in them, because life is so much more than what we experience.
Yeah.
Life is doing moments together.
Mhm,
Life is seeing another individual's life changed.
mhm,
Life is getting down and rolling up your sleeves and helping another person up.
mhm,
But life is feeding another person, whether it's spiritually, emotionally, or physically.
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
so life is not about us. Life is about the people that's around us.
Ooh, that you're gonna leave me with that for the day. Wow, that one packed a punch. Good thing I'm sitting.
Oh,
Wow, 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 wow. Where can my listeners find you and support what you're doing?
so they can find me on Facebook currently. I have a Facebook page. It's called Rise to Create.
Mm,
Uh, all of my contact information is there. You can also find me at the @ sign at it's at I Rise to Create.
mm,
My email is irise2create@gmail.com.
mhm,
Or my phone number is also on Facebook. They can either message me, call me. I would be happy to speak with them and see if we could be a good fit.
mhm. Awesome. Well, Tara, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing
Yes.
your story. Thank you for helping women heal and see God in their chaos
Yes.
and in their pain and suffering. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a blessing.
You're welcome.